Hey guys, tonight we dive into the frostbitten corners of Norse myth, where the snow crunches like bones underfoot, and the wind carries whispers older than time. You're standing on the edge of something colossal. Not just a story, but a storm one. That starts with a wolf, a prophecy, and a chain lighter than a feather, but stronger than steel. Somewhere in the tundra of your mind, a sound echoes low, guttural, almost a growl. You can't see anything yet. Only barren trees, gray skies, and the smell of pine sap freezing in the air. But then your boot nudges something, a piece of stone, carved with runes so old they feel older than language itself. You tilt it toward the pale sun. There's a symbol, a wolf's eye, wide open, inked in crimson. That's your first clue. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, post your location and local time. I love seeing where you're all tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into today's journey together. You trudge through thick snow under a sky the color of iron. Somewhere beneath you, far below Midgard's frost-layered crust, something stirs. The earth hums, not loudly, not enough to scare you, just enough to make you think. Maybe you shouldn't be here. Welcome to the mystery of Fenrir, the wolf fated to devour the gods. But we don't start with prophecy. No, we start with a whisper. A quiet unease that settled over the gods of Asgard one winter morning when Odin, all-feather and long-bearded overthinker, looked into the future and saw teeth. You're in his high hall now, Valaskjolf, with its silver throne and walls shimmering with stars. Odin sits hunched, eye patch fogged with breath. He's staring into a pool of water, so still it might be glass. Behind him, Hugin and Munin, his ravens, shift nervously. Odin has seen Ragnarok again, and this time the vision was clearer than usual. A wolf, not just any wolf. The wolf. See, in Norse myth, time isn't a straight line, it's more like a tree, or a tangle of tree roots after a hurricane. And Odin, with one eye traded for wisdom, can read its twisted branches. He doesn't like what he sees. This brings us to the ancient fact. In the Voluspa, one of the most respected Old Norse poems, seers speak of a monstrous wolf whose jaws will stretch from sky to ground, swallowing Odin and bringing night to the 9 realms. That wolf? Fenrir. Now here's the quirky part. Some fringe theorists believe Fenrir wasn't originally a wolf. Yeah, there's a belief floating around the academic bonfire that early Indo-European myth conflated wolves with destructive storms, and Fenrir may have started as a storm god metaphor gone rogue. A kind of weather panic wrapped in fur. Historians still argue whether Fenrir was always evil, or if that reputation came from Asgardian PR. After all, the gods raised him. Why would you rear something you already planned to kill? Anyway, back to you, because you're still wandering and your fingers are numb. Ahead, nestled between 2 boulders, is a cave. You feel drawn to it, even though logic is throwing up all the red flags. You step in. The light dims, your footsteps echo, and suddenly you hear breathing, deep, slow, rhythmic, like the lungs of something asleep. Something huge. You find yourself whispering without meaning to. Fenrir, you've said his name. That means something here. The walls shake subtly, as if reacting to the name's memory. You hold your breath. In Norse culture, names weren't just labels, they were power. To name something was to know it. And knowing this name might have just woken something. But relax, you're safe. For now, let's drift back a little. See, the moment Odin saw Fenrir's future, he knew 2 things. First, Fenrir had to be contained. Second, he had no idea how to do it. Not yet. And this is where the contradictions start to build. The gods decided to raise Fenrir themselves. Yep, the wolf of the apocalypse, babysat by literal deities. It's like if the Avengers adopted Godzilla because his daycare options were limited. They brought him to Asgard, fed him roast meat, played fetch with him, though eventually they had to stop that because the stick started returning in pieces. You're watching all this unfold through a dream fog. You see a small black wolf pup, eyes too intelligent, paws too big for his body. He's adorable. In a definitely going to ruin the world someday kind of way. The gods tried to treat him like a pet, but even the bravest warriors avoided his stare, except Wonder, the god of war and law. More on him later. For now, just remember, he was the only one who dared feed Fenrir by hand. There's something eerie about how fast the pup grows. One day he's small enough to ride on Thor's shoulder. A week later, he's taller than Frigg's garden wall. 3 days after that, the meat supplies mysteriously vanish overnight. Still, Fenrir doesn't attack. Not yet. He just watches. Waiting, maybe. Or wondering why his family stares at him like a loaded crossbow. And this is where you begin to feel it too. That twist in your gut. That silent question pressing against your ribs like ice. What happens when something made for doom is raised in love? The cave hums again. Your breath steams in the air. Outside, the wind picks up. This is only the beginning. The whisper is growing louder. You blink and the cave is gone, or maybe you blinked into it. Either way, you're not standing in snow anymore. You're in Asgard, vibrant, towering, unnervingly perfect. The sky is too blue. The wind smells like pine, leather, and something vaguely electric, like ozone before a lightning strike. You're standing just behind a group of gods. They're forming a wary semicircle around something. It's a pup. Or at least it was. That word barely fits anymore. You can still see hints of puppy awkwardness in his oversized paws and lolling pink tongue, but the muscles beneath his fur shift like thunderclouds. This is Fenrir, the wolf who will someday eat the sky. And today he's chewing on a bone, the size of a tree branch, tail wagging happily. It's a little like watching someone cuddle a nuke. You might ask, why raise him here? Why let him grow up surrounded by gods he's destined to destroy? Well, welcome to the divine logic of Norse mythology. It's less family-friendly Disney and more Greek tragedy, but colder. Odin had a vision. This wolf would play a key role in Ragnarok. But instead of killing him immediately, Odin thought, maybe, just maybe, we can tame fate. That's right, he tried the old nurture beats nature strategy. Spoiler alert, it goes badly. Historically, the gods feared chaos, but they couldn't resist testing it. It's like trying to hug a tornado just to see if you could. The ancient Norse believed in cycles: birth, destruction, rebirth, so perhaps Odin thought raising Fenrir could delay or even change the outcome. Here's the mainstream fact. Fenrir is the son of Loki, the trickster god. But not with a goddess, no. Loki fathered Fenrir with the giantess Angrboda, whose name literally means the one who brings grief. A healthy Norse couple, if there ever was one. Together, they had 3 children. Hel, who oversees the dead, Jarmungandr, the world serpent who encircles Midgard, and of course, our furry apocalypse on pause, Fenrir. 3 beings so terrifying that even the gods panicked at the ultrasound results. Fringe theory alert. Some academics suggest that Hel, Jarmungandr, and Fenrir weren't always portrayed as villains. In early mythic cycles, they may have been guardians of balance figures who embodied the necessary chaos that keeps the cosmic wheel turning. The villainization may have come later, when Christian scribes rewrote these tales with a more black and white morality lens. Historians still argue whether Loki's children were always monsters or later victims of mythic spin-doctoring. But back in Asgard, Fenrir's siblings were exiled instantly. Jarmungandr was thrown into the sea. Hel was dumped into the underworld. Only Fenrir was kept. Why? Maybe because he looked the most like something they could pretend to love. And so, you watch this pup grow. It's slow at first. 1 foot taller each month, then 3 feet, then 7. The gods stop inviting him to feast halls. They stop petting his head. They stop looking him in the eye, all except Tyr. Ah, yes, Tyr, the old war god. The one with the quiet eyes and the sharp mind. He still feeds Fenrir, stays beside him, talks to him as if he were just another soul trying to find his place. You see them walk together, one with a sword on his back, the other with teeth like daggers and eyes like eclipses. There's a bond there, a trust. And if you look closer, you'll see it hurts to more than anyone to lie, because the gods have started whispering, plotting, they're building something. Meanwhile, Fenrir doesn't lash out. He asks questions. Why can't I eat with the others? Why do you flinch when I yawn? Why do the guards carry weapons now, even during breakfast? And no one answers except Tyr, who never lies but also never tells the truth. Instead, he distracts, offers more meat, talks of heroics, tells stories of a world outside this one. A world where wolves don't have to be villains, but you feel the tension. It hums like harp strings in a storm. The gods are playing a dangerous game, and the pieces are shifting faster than they can count. At this point, Fenrir's paws leave craters in the soil. His back grazes the bottom branches of Yggdrasil itself. The heavens are too small for him. You can sense it. He's going to burst from this place. One day, soon, but he still wants to believe. That's the part no one tells you. Fenrir, this devourer of gods, wasn't always rage and prophecy. Once, he just wanted to be accepted. He curled beside hearth fires. He ran through misty fields with the breeze at his ears. He listened when Tyr sang, but you don't raise something with teeth that big and expect it to stay gentle forever, especially if everyone it loves starts to fear it. Here's something that'll stick in your head as you try to sleep. There are only 2 creatures in Norse mythology that the gods ever tried to raise themselves: Sleipnir, Odin's 8-legged horse, and Fenrir. Both were children of Loki. One they rode into battle. The other they chained to a rock. So which one do you think ended up resenting them more? You walk through the halls of Asgard one last time before the dream starts to blur again. You see Fenrir resting beside a cracked pillar, golden eyes half closed. A god passes with averted eyes. Another walks faster near him. And then you hear him sigh, a deep, weary sound, not a growl. Not yet, just a sigh like someone waiting to be told the truth. You step away. You don't look back. Because in your bones, you know what's coming next. The gods are building something behind closed doors. And Fenrir is still growing. You descend again, this time not into caves or dreams, but deeper still into the murky space where memory and myth entwine like roots in the dirt. You're not alone. You feel eyes watching. Not menacing, just aware, curious. You've stepped into the shadow of the other children. The ones Odin didn't dare raise. You remember that Fenrir had siblings. Most people do, vaguely, like a family photo you half recognize. But now, they come into focus. And once you see them, you can't unsee them. First, you meet Hel. Don't flinch. She doesn't want your fear, just your attention. She's half beautiful, half decaying, literally. One side of her face glows like a meadow in spring, the other hangs with death's embrace. She rules over Helheim, the Norse underworld, but not the fire and brimstone variety. No, hers is a cold land, quiet, dreary, honest. Hel didn't ask for this job. Odin gave it to her, abruptly exiling her once he realized who she was. You're beginning to notice a pattern. She was a child, and so was Jarmungandr, a serpent so vast that Odin hurled him into the sea just to keep him out of sight. He didn't drown. Instead, he grew, wrapped himself around the world like a scaly, muscular embrace no one asked for. His own body became a prison. You feel a kind of sadness laced through these stories. 3 children, all cast away. Banished not for crimes committed, but for crimes foretold. Children punished for their future, and only Fenrir remained. You begin to suspect the gods weren't raising him out of kindness. No, they were watching, studying, waiting for the prophecy to slip from dream into daylight. Here's your historical nugget. The names of Loki's children appear in Gylfaginning, a section of Snorri Sturluson's Prose Edda. Scholars believe these tales were shaped during the Christianization of Iceland, and it's likely Snorri added extra villainy to make the pagan gods look less cool to Sunday school. Fenrir's siblings may have been demonized to fit the new narrative. After all, it's easier to convert people when their old gods start sounding like villains. Fringe theory time. There's speculation lightly whispered, like mythic gossip, that Hel, Jormungandr, and Fenrir each represent a necessary piece of existence. Hel governs death and the afterlife. Jormungandr encircles the world, holding it together. Fenrir, he breaks the cycle, a walking reset button. Not evil, just essential. Historians still argue whether Odin feared Fenrir because of the Volf's power, or because he knew he was the reason that power would be used. But you're not a historian, you're just here, standing beneath a sky gone unnaturally still. You look up, and for a moment, you imagine Jormungandr's body far above you, tightening like a belt around the world. You feel Hel's breath, cool and deliberate, at the nape of your neck, and in the distance, like a storm behind the mountains, you hear Fenrir's low growl. He's alone now. Thor still visits, but the others have vanished. No more feast invites. No sparring matches with Thor. No braided daisies left by Idun. Just him. And the knowledge that somewhere beyond the gates of Asgard, his siblings were cast into exile. You can feel his confusion turning to resentment. You can smell it, even like burnt pine resin and iron. He doesn't lash out yet, but when he speaks, his voice rumbles like distant avalanches. They fear me, he says, not as a question. Not anymore, and to poor Tyr tries to spin it. They fear what might happen, not who you are. But it doesn't land. Not when Fenrir's paws leave impact craters with each step. Not when the sky dims slightly every time he opens his mouth. You follow him one morning, just after dawn. He walks through the golden meadows of Asgard, nose twitching at the scent of apples, birdsong filtering through the mist. He stops by a reflecting pool one Odin once used to gaze into fate. Fenrir peers into it, and then he howls. It's not rage. Not yet, it's grief. A long aching cry that seems to twist the trees, warp the clouds, and curl the sky inward. You feel it reverberate in your ribs like thunder in a cave. And in it, you hear everything he's lost. His siblings, his trust, his place. And then silence, because even grief grows quiet eventually. But it doesn't disappear. Fenrir returns to his den, if you can call a crater-ridden meadow a den. He lies down, closes his eyes, and dreams. Do you want to know what he dreams of? Not fire, not blood, but running. Across fields that never end. Through forests that don't burn. Past rivers that don't fear him. You don't need a scholar to tell you what that means. But here's a phrase you'll want to remember as we move forward. Myth doesn't forget. It just waits. And Fenrir? He's waiting too. The waiting ends with meat. Well, sort of. It begins innocently enough. A morning like any other in Asgard. Sun glittering through ice-frosted leaves. The scent of roasted boar drifting on the wind. The gods gather at the feasting table. Laughter echoing off the golden halls, but something's missing. Someone. You glance over. Fenrir is not at the table, not anymore. They stopped inviting him months ago. His appetite, once endearing, had grown unsettling. When he bit through a silver serving tray and the table beneath it, even Thor admitted it was time for some personal space. So now each day, a feast is prepared for him separately. Hauled out by a nervous young god, or one of the more heroic squirrels. You think that's a joke? It's not. In Norse myth, Ratatoskr was a squirrel who ran up and down Yggdrasil delivering insults and apparently the occasional leg of lamb. But today, it's Tyr who delivers the food. Again, always. You follow him across the courtyard, silver dish balanced in one hand, the other resting nervously on his sword hilt, not because he plans to use it, but because old habits die hard. As he approaches Fenrir's den, the air thickens. There's a weight to it. Not fear, exactly more like the feeling you get when someone says they just want to talk. And you know it's not just talk. Fenrir looks up, doesn't rise, doesn't growl, just stares. Yellow eyes glowing like twin lanterns in the shadow of a mountain. You're quiet today, Tyr says, settling the dish beside him. Fenrir nudges it once with his nose, then speaks. Tell me, Tyr, do you fear me? The god pauses, blinks. No, he says too quickly. Fenrir doesn't press. He doesn't need to. The tension hangs there like a blade suspended by a single horsehair. That's when the real trouble begins. Behind the scenes, the other gods have been planning, scheming. They've decided it's time. The Wolf has grown too big, too strong. His shadow stretches across the realm. Something must be done. And so, they propose a test, a little game. They say, let's challenge Fenrir to show off his strength. We'll bind him with chains for fun, of course, and let him break free. Just to prove he's harmless, like arm wrestling or an ego check. Now you might think Fenrir would be suspicious of this, and you'd be right. He is. But here's the twist. He wants to believe them. He wants to think it's still just a game. So, the first chain arrives. Thick, heavy, forged from the roots of a mountain. They call it Legijingur. Fenrir eyes it, snorts once, and lets them wrap it around his legs. You can feel the gods holding their breath. He tenses, shakes, and the chain snaps like dry spaghetti. Shears erupt, slightly forced. Fenrir gives a wolfish grin. Try harder, he says. And so they do. They bring Drami, the second chain twice as thick, rune-carved, forged in dragon fire. This time, it takes him a bit longer. The mountains rumble, trees sway. Then crack Drami shatters in a rain of sparks and divine embarrassment. By now, Fenrir is starting to get suspicious. He tilts his head. You're not doing this for fun. Thor adjusts his belt awkwardly. Odin clears his throat. Heimdall mutters something about necessary precautions. Tyr doesn't say a word. That night, you sit with Fenrir as he watches the stars. His breath fogs in the cold. He doesn't sleep, he knows, but he also knows they're not done. And sure enough, the next morning, they bring out something new. Not a chain. A ribbon. You blink. That can't be right. It's silken, soft, shimmers like moonlight on fresh snow. It looks like something you'd use to tie a birthday present. Not subdue a walking apocalypse, but this is Gleipnir. Here's your historical anchor. Gleipnir is described in the Prose Edda as being made from 6 impossibilities: the sound of a cat's footfall, a woman's beard, mountain roots, bear sinews, fish breath, and bird spittle. You're welcome for the mental image. Fringe fact. Some occult historians believe Gleipnir's description isn't literal, but symbolic, each item representing a law of reality that must be broken to make the chain work. In other words, Gleipnir isn't just unbreakable. It's impossible. Fenrir eyes it narrowly. This is different, he says. The gods assure him, laughingly, that it's just a test, harmless. They dare him to break it. But Fenrir doesn't move. He just stares at them. I don't trust you, he says at last. If I let you bind me, you might not let me go. An awkward silence. Then Tyr, good, loyal Tyr, steps forward. If we betray you, he says quietly, you may take my hand. The silence deepens. Fenrir studies him. Tyr meets his gaze, and then slowly, Fenrir lies down. Lets the ribbon wrap around his paws, his haunches, his chest. You feel a change in the air. The gods step back. Fenrir growls once low, twists, pulls out nothing, no movement. He snarls, throws his weight, claws, bites nothing. Gleipnir holds. It doesn't even tremble. And that's when it happens. He lunges toward Tyr and clamps down. The scream is brief. The blood steams on the frost. The gods recoil. Some even cheer, half in shock, half in triumph. The trap worked. Fenrir is bound. But you feel something else. A shift. Something fundamental has broken, not in the chain, but in trust. Fenrir's roar echoes across Asgard, not of pain, not even of anger. Of betrayal. You back away slowly. You know this isn't the end. It's the pause before the storm. The gods think they've won, but you've seen Fenrir's eyes. This story is far from over. The gods walk away. They do it slowly, trying not to look hurried, not to show the tension in their shoulders, the guilt hanging like frost on their breath. Tyr is gone, handless now, quietly bleeding as he disappears into the hall of silence. The rest scatter, awkwardly congratulating one another, avoiding eye contact with the wolf now chained beneath the open sky. In Fenrir is still. You're standing not far off, watching the ribbon shimmer faintly in the light. Gleipnir, so delicate, so absurd now, lies coiled around a creature large enough to block the sun when he rears up. He doesn't move, doesn't speak. But you can feel the fury radiating off him, not hot, but cold, icy, restrained, waiting. He's not howling, not struggling. Not yet. And that's the worst part. Because you know he knows this wasn't about safety. It was about control. You look around. The meadow where Fenrir once walked is scarred now, his claw marks etched deep into the stone. The flowers that bloomed there, crushed. The birds that used to nest in the branches above, gone. It's silent. Even the wind avoids him now. You step a little closer, enough to see his breath fogging in slow, measured rhythms. His head is low, but one golden eye tracks your every movement. He doesn't lunge, doesn't growl, just watches, and you wonder, how long will he wait? Because this isn't the kind of anger that explodes. This is the kind that ferments. Historical sidebar. The myth says that once Fenrir was bound, the gods shoved a sword into his mouth, wedging it between his jaws so he couldn't bite again. His upper jaw pressed to the heavens, the lower against the earth, as if he were yawning forever. From that moment, he drooled rivers. Literal rivers, by the way. The myth says one of them became Van, a cursed river of poison. Yeah, went that far. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some versions of the myth say the gods only pretended to imprison Fenrir permanently. A few fringe scholars suggest that Gleipnir was a temporary measure, a time lock holding him until Ragnarok, not to punish, but to protect him from fulfilling prophecy. Sort of a mythic cryochamber. Sweet idea. Completely undermined by the whole stab him in the face thing. Historians still argue whether the sword was literal or metaphorical. Some say it represents silence, that the gods didn't just stop his bite, they stopped his voice. You turn now, looking up toward the horizon where Asgard's walls shine in the distance. It's peaceful. Too peaceful. No horns, no thunder. Just the calm after betrayal. And as you turn back to Fenrir, you realize he isn't the villain here. Not yet. You walk through time again, your steps quiet as snowfall. Days pass, seasons, years. The gods forget. Or pretend to. Fenrir doesn't. The world keeps turning, but something shifts beneath it. Every winter feels a little colder. Every summer ends too soon. Storms howl louder, shadows stretch longer. The harmony of the 9 realms phrase, thread by glowing thread. You hear rumors, mortal one stories that creep down from the mountains. Of wolves seen in dreams. Of children born during eclipses howling without knowing why. Of rivers turning bitter near strange stones carved with ancient wolf-eyes. No one speaks his name. But he's there. Watching. Breathing. Waiting. You visit the Place again, the field where he lies chained. But now the grass is dead, the earth cracked. Gleipnir still holds, glowing faintly, but the strain is showing. Not in the ribbon, but in the world itself. You wonder, what exactly is holding him? Back? The gods believe it's the chain. You suspect it's something else. He's holding himself back, and when that ends? Well, let's just say you're lucky to be listening to this in bed, under covers, with the fan on low. Because this piece, it's borrowed. Temporary. Across the plains, in the halls of prophecy, Odin shifts in his seat. He's older now, even older. The weight of fate pressing down on his one-eyed gaze. He sees the end in fragments, flashes of fire, screams, jaws opening wide. He pretends he doesn't see the truth. The beast they chained is no longer a beast. He's become a force, something bigger than gods, bigger than prophecy. Fenrir is the fate. Consequence. And when you chain a consequence long enough, it doesn't vanish. It just waits, and waits, and waits. Until you're no longer in the field. It's hard to say where you are now, exactly. Somewhere colder, quieter, a liminal space stitched from silence and snow. The sky is pale gray, the kind that promises either dawn or doom, and you're standing before a stone altar crusted with ancient frost. There's a hand lying atop it, not severed, not bleeding, just resting. You know whose it is. Tyr, the god of oaths, war, and just causes. The only one among the Aesir who fed Fenrir without flinching. The only one who told him the truth, at least once. The only one who paid the price. You reach toward the hand but freeze mid-gesture. Because now, behind you, you hear footsteps. Soft, rhythmic, measured. You turn, and there he is, Tyr, older now. His left sleeve folded neatly where the wrist should be. He nods once at you, expression neutral, but you feel something beneath it, regret, maybe, or something heavier. I gave it freely, he says quietly, answering the question you haven't asked. And for a moment, the silence between you holds like winter's breath. You walk with him across memory, through fading halls of myth. He tells you things the sagas leave out. Like how the gods argued over Fenrir's fate, how Frigg wept, pleading for mercy, how Thor, for once, remained silent, because even he, the brashest, felt uneasy about binding a creature they'd helped raise, or how Odin insisted that it had to be done, not because he hated Fenrir, but because he feared what the idea of Fenrir represented: unstoppable fate, uncontrolled consequence. And Tyr, he didn't agree. But he gave his hand anyway, not as a symbol of trust, as a shield, I thought. He says, eyes distant, if he saw even one of us willing to sacrifice, he might remember, might choose a different path. And for a while it worked. Fenrir lay still, but inside, something changed. You return now to that field decades later. Centuries even. Gleipnir still gleams in soft gold. The sword still props his jaws open. And Fenrir is no longer a creature. He's a landscape. Moss grows between his toes. Ravens perch on his back, mistaking him for hill or altar. Wind flows around his body like a mountain range. He doesn't move, but he dreams, and oh, the dreams of running through forests unshackled, of stars melting into his fur, of howling at a sky that doesn't chain him in prophecy. And sometimes, he dreams of Thor, of the god who didn't flinch, but mostly, he dreams of Odin, and when he does, the wind changes, the trees sway. The sword in his mouth vibrates, ever so slightly, because there's a fire growing in Fenrir now. Slow, steady, not rage. Not hate. Resolve. A quiet promise wrapped in fur and fury. Here's your historical grounding. In Norse myth, Fenrir's binding marks a point of no return. From this moment on, the gods have sealed their doom. Not because Fenrir is cruel, but because they were. Every god who laughed when the ribbon tightened signed their own death warrant. Quirky fact time: in certain Icelandic folk versions, Fenrir is said to grow large enough that, when he finally opens his mouth, the lower jaw will touch the ground while the upper reaches the sky, swallowing the sun. As poetic as it is unsettling, historians still argue whether this symbolizes literal destruction or the collapse of cosmic order. Sunlight replaced by wolf-shaped entropy. You stand now beside Fenrir's great head. His eyes, half closed, are veiled in frost and silence, but you feel something stir behind them, like a clock ticking, like a storm charging. And then you hear a voice, not Fenrir's, Tyr's, faint behind you. Everything ends, he says. But not all endings are evil. You turn to ask him what he means, but he's already gone. Only the wind answers now, and the wolf watches, waits, and breathes. You step back, not in fear, but reverence. Because you understand something now, something the gods never did. Fenrir was never the monster, he was the mirror, and soon, the gods will have to look. You're falling now, not in panic. Not fast, like a leaf. The world spins slowly around you, shimmering shards of memory and myth swirling, as if someone shattered a stained glass window of the cosmos. You drift past constellations shaped like wolves, through dreams of gods long dead, and finally, softly, land back in the field. Except, the field is no longer here. There's a mountain now, and bound to it, half swallowed by stone and time, is Fenrir. You're standing at the edge of a precipice. The air is sharp, the wind hollow and ancient. You peer down and see him still bound, still chained, but the grass is gone, the flowers are gone. Even the light feels thinner. Fenrir has become a fixture of the land, part statue, part myth, all tension. Like someone left a god-sized grenade in the middle of the world with the pin half pulled. And he's awake, not moving, yet, but his eyes are open, golden, steady. You sit beside him. He doesn't blink. You think of all the years since the binding, of how the gods continued on as if nothing had happened. They held feasts, fought battles, told stories, and in every tale they told, Fenrir's name came with a warning: monster, doombringer, devourer of light. But he never spoke. Until now. I was loyal. He rumbles. His voice shakes the ground beneath you. I played their game, ate their food, let them leash me like a pet. His breath curls around you, not warm, not cold, just vast. And they still feared me. You try to speak, but your voice falters. He speaks again. Not louder, not angrier, just quieter. And that makes it worse. Tell me, if you were fated to fall, would you want the truth? Or the illusion? You're not sure how to answer, and maybe you're not supposed to. Historical sidebar. In some lesser-known versions of the myth, Fenrir speaks before Ragnarok. Not in threats, but in prophecy. He warns of what's to come, not to boast, but as a courtesy. One final act of dignity before the storm. Fringe theory. Certain scholars suggest Fenrir's binding was meant to protect the world from the gods, not the other way around. That he wasn't the agent of Ragnarok, but its last line of defense. A safeguard against Odin's spiral into fatalism and control. Historians still argue whether Odin truly believed in the prophecy, or if he made it happen by trying too hard to prevent it. Like smashing the ship to stop it from sinking. You close your eyes, and for a moment, you hear everything. The roots of Yggdrasil creaking, the distant echoes of Valkyries sharpening blades, the pulse of Midgard's heart slowing, and Fenrir's breath. Not heavy, not wild. Measured. As if he's counting down. You open your eyes. The mountain begins to tremble. A tiny vibration at first, like a shiver running through the crust of the world. Gleipnir glows, strained and whisper thin. The sword in Fenrir's jaws hums with tension. And then he stops, holds perfectly still. Not yet. He's Not breaking free today. He just wants them to feel it. To know that he could, that he will. Soon. You look to the sky, and for a heartbeat, it flickers, as if the sun blinked, as if the world remembered something it's been trying to forget. Then silence again. Fenrir's eyes close. The wind softens. The gods, miles away in golden halls, feel a chill they cannot explain. Something has shifted. You back away from the edge of the mountain. Not running. Just aware. Because this is no longer about fate. This is about consequence. And Fenrir is becoming it. The sky is darker now. Not night, just bruised. As if the heavens themselves have begun to anticipate what's coming. You walk through a forest older than memory, where trees twist like frozen screams and birds have forgotten how to sing. Still, even here, you feel him. Fenrir. Not just as a creature chained to a mountain, but as a presence. A pressure. A question hanging above the world that no one dares answer. The gods don't speak of him anymore. They pretend his story is over, but stories, especially the dangerous ones, don't die when ignored. They grow teeth. You push through the woods and emerge into a clearing. At the center stands a strange shape low to the ground, half hidden in snow and moss. You brush aside the leaves and find it. An altar. No, not an altar. A shrine. To him. Someone somewhere has been worshipping Fenrir. Offerings lie around the base. Bones, tokens, scraps of fur. Even a delicate carving of a wolf howling at a shattered sun. Someone lit a candle here recently. It still flickers. You didn't expect this. But maybe you should have, because here's your mainstream fact. Fenrir, in modern pagan circles, has undergone a bit of a redemption arc. Some neo-pagan groups especially, those who lean toward chaos deities or anti-authoritarian myth, view him not as a villain, but as a symbol of resistance, of truth, of a power that refuses to be shackled by unjust control. Quirky footnote: there's even fan fiction. Yes, Fenrir fan fiction. In some stories, he's reimagined as a tragic anti-hero, a misunderstood godvolf with a soft spot for lonely mortals. There's at least one Tumblr thread where he falls in love with a librarian. I'm not kidding. Historians still argue whether this modern embrace of Fenrir distorts the original myth, or finally reclaims it. You step back from the shrine. Not out of fear, out of respect, because the idea of Fenrir is no longer just myth. It's movement, and it's spreading. You journey on across icy plains, past sleeping volcanoes and rivers frozen mid-lament. Along the way, you see more signs. Scratches on stone that resemble claw marks, trees bent into strange archways. Footprints, too large for any beast that walks today. And always, that same feeling, he's near. You're not sure how long you've walked. Hours? Days? Time bleeds in this place. But finally, you arrive. The mountain. Not a mountain. The mountain. The one where they left him. The one where they hoped he'd disappear. You climb. The wind grows cruel, biting through your coat, your thoughts, your memory. You press on. And there at the summit, you see him again. Fenrir. Bigger than before. Barely recognizable. No longer just a wolf, a force. You expected rage, violence, roaring flame. But no, he's calm. Frozen in place, yes, but not idle. His breath rises in quiet clouds. His eyes, half-lidded, scan the horizon like a king watching his realm. He sees you, and you bow. Not because you're afraid, because he's earned it. He speaks. I remember you, he says, voice as soft as thunder in the bones. You were there when they tied the ribbon. You nod. He tilts his head slightly. There's something strange in his gaze. Curiosity maybe, or caution. Or somehow hope. They feared I would destroy everything, he says. But what they never asked was, why would I want to? You blink. That question hangs between you like a blade on a thread. They created the prophecy, he continues. and then fulfilled it. Bound me, lied to me, betrayed me, and now they wait. He looks skyward. They think I will kill Odin. He chuckles low, bitter. But what if I don't? That silences even the wind. You step forward. Ask the question no one else ever dared. Then what will you do? Fenrir closes his eyes and smiles. You wake up in fire. Not literal fire, though the air smells like ash and the wind tastes like smoke, but something primal, smoldering beneath your skin. You're standing now on the edge of time itself, watching as the 9 realms tremble under invisible weight. And far below, Fenrir has moved, not far. Just a breath. Just enough for the snow around him to melt and refreeze in perfect spirals. Gleipnir still holds. Barely. The sword still juts from his jaws, but it wobbles now, no longer. The silent gag it once was. And the gods? They know. You see them in Asgard pacing halls of gold and ivory, pretending to feast, pretending to laugh. Odin's ravens whisper in his ear more often now. Heimdall doesn't blink. Thor sharpens Mjolnir against nothing at all. They're stalling. The prophecy draws near. Here's your historical breadcrumb. In Norse eschatology, Ragnarok is foretold with chilling specificity. Fenrir breaks free. Odin faces him in single combat. And Fenrir giant, monstrous, unrelenting swallows him whole. Fringe theory. Some scholars argue this battle is not physical, but metaphorical. Odin represents control, knowledge, fate. Fenrir represents wild truth, consequence, entropy. The devouring isn't gore, it's collapse. The old order falling to what it tried to deny. Historians still argue whether Ragnarok was ever meant to be taken literally, or if it was the Norse way of acknowledging that even gods cannot escape change. You walk now through Asgard's outer gates. No one stops you. You're a ghost here. The gods are gathered at the Well of Urd, their last meeting place before the end. The Norns, the 3 sisters who spend fate, stand silent nearby. Their loom has stopped. The thread they were weaving is short. Very short. Odin turns, his one eye heavy with knowing. He sees you and speaks. He's ready. It's not fear in his voice. It's resignation. He turns back toward the mountain. And far away, you feel the tremor ripple through the 9 realms as Fenrir shifts again. This time, it is not subtle. Gleipnir sings a shrill metallic cry like a violin string stretched to breaking. The sword between his jaws glows red hot, and Fenrir opens one eye. The world pauses. Birds stop mid-flight. Snowflakes hover in place. Even the wind forgets which way it was blowing. Fenrir stands. The ribbon does not snap. It unravels, unspools itself into strands of gold and impossibility, vanishing like smoke in moonlight. No struggle. No explosion. Just freedom. And the sword, he lets it fall. Not with violence, with grace. You watch it clatter down the mountainside like a discarded lie. He stretches, a slow, luxurious motion, like a cat waking from centuries of sleep. And then he runs. Not down. Up. Into the sky. His paws leave scorch marks on the clouds. His breath steams against the moon. His hollow gods. His howl rattles the foundations of Valhalla itself. You see, Odin flinched. Just once. And then he straightens. Raises his spear, and walks out to meet his fate. The sky turns black, the stars blink out, and somewhere, deep inside you, something whispers, this isn't the end, this is the reckoning, because Fenrir isn't just a wolf. He's every broken promise, every forced silence, every truth tied down because it made someone uncomfortable. And now? He runs unbound. Not for blood, not for vengeance, for balance. Because the world tipped too far in one direction, and it takes a monster to set it straight. You take one final look at the sky. Fenrir, silhouetted against flame. Odin advancing like a storm. And then you close your eyes. Because the story you came to witness, it's no longer a story. It's happening. You open your eyes into twilight. Not the quiet kind that kisses the treetops. This is a twilight of endings, an hour balanced on the blade between existence and undoing. Across the sky, clouds unravel like threads of smoke. The stars retreat, leaving only Fenrir, a vast silhouette outlined in fire, standing before the gates of Valhalla. Odin waits. And you? You hold your breath, but not because of the fight, because of what's underneath it. The silence is unbearable. Not because it's empty, but because it's full, crackling with the weight of things left unsaid. Of questions too dangerous for gods to answer. Fenrir takes one step forward, and the ground beneath the 9 realms fractures ever so slightly. He doesn't snarl. He doesn't roar. He stares. And Odin, all-father of prophecy and sacrifice, raises his spear. They speak. No one hears the words. Not even you. But their exchange is old, so old it predates language. It's the silent conversation between a mistake and its consequence. Between a warning and its willful dismissal. Then Fenrir lunges. Time fractures. You see it all at once. His jaw unhinging. His breath turning the air into shards of ice. Odin's spear thrusting forward like a final desperate prayer. And then, darkness. Because Fenrir swallows him whole. Not messily. Not cruelly. Almost ceremonial. As if this was never a battle, but a ritual. The sky breaks open. Here's your historical echo. In the poetic Edda, it's foretold that Fenrir devours Odin at Ragnarök, and that Odin's son, Viwar, avenges him not with fire or thunder, but with silence and strength. He steps forward, driven not by rage, but by balance. Fringe fact. Some scholars think Vigar's role in myth is more symbolic than heroic. He represents nature's quiet correction, the stillness that comes after a great noise, the healing that follows upheaval. He wears a shoe made from all the discarded scraps of leather in the world, the myth says, which is either a poetic image or the strangest footwear origin story in history. Historians still argue whether Viwar killing Fenrir is justice or just another cycle of power replacing power. You stand now at the edge of the battlefield. Everything's burning, but not in a way that feels hopeless. It feels cleansing. Fenrir staggers. The moment of triumph passes quickly, as moments always do. Because from the smoke steps Viwar, tall, silent, barefoot. And calm. He carries no shield, wears no crown. His only weapon is a wordless oath forged in the shadow of his father's fall. He moves with terrible grace. And Fenrir? Fenrir doesn't run. He waits. You don't know if he's too tired to flee, or if he knows this was always meant to happen. Maybe both. Maybe that's the point. Viwar steps close. Places one foot, that foot on Fenrir's lower jaw, forcing it open. In his hand, a silent dagger. You don't want to watch, but you do. Not because you crave the ending, because you owe it to the story. Viwar drives the dagger upward. Fenrir's breath catches. The sky flashes once, like a camera shutter, and then stillness. You expect a roar, a last curse, a godly scream, but all you hear is the wind. Fenrir falls. Slowly. Like a glacier sliding into memory. His body hits the earth with a sound like thunder, learning to cry. And everything stops. No cheering. No mourning. Just balance. At long last, you kneel beside him. He's not a monster now, not a beast. Just tired. The jaw relaxes. The eyes dim. You swear, just before they close, he looks at you. And you know what you see in that gaze? Not regret, not even anger. Relief. The silence that follows is not peace. It's the breath held between collapse and rebuilding. The stunned hush of a world realizing it's still here. You stand among the ruins. Smoke curls upward in lazy spirals. The stars have not returned. Yet, the sun has not decided if it will rise again. Fenrir lies still. Viwar stands over him, not in triumph but in reverence. He doesn't gloat, doesn't roar. He simply bows his head as if acknowledging the truth of what he's done, and the necessity of it. You look at Fenrir's body immense, fur dusted with ash, breath quiet but fading. He's not dead yet, but you can tell. He's finished. He didn't lose. He let go. He could have kept fighting. Torn realms apart. Burned everything. But he didn single quotes to da he chose to end it here. And that changes everything. You sit beside him, resting. A hand on his paw the size of a boulder. His pulse is slow but steady. The gods do not approach. Not yet. They stay at the edges of this shattered plain, their divine eyes lowered, their golden armor dented by humility. Even Thor, even Frigg, only Tyr steps forward. You're surprised to see him, but then again, you're not. He kneels beside you, looks at the fallen Wolf, touches the earth with his remaining hand. I told them, he says softly. He wasn't the monster. You nod. Words feel too small. Tyr turns his face to the sky. Do you hear that? He whispers that you do, a sound soft, rhythmic, ancient. The heartbeat of Yggdrasil, the world tree. It still beats. Slower than before. But alive. Somehow. Fenrir didn't end everything. He reset it. And now, a strange thing begins to happen. From the cracks in the battlefield, green pushes through. Tiny shoots of grass. Sprigs of wildflowers. A fern. A single stubborn daisy curling toward the sky. As if to say, we're not done yet. You smile despite yourself, because this is the twist no prophecy mentioned. Fenrir was supposed to devour everything, but instead, he made room. Here's your historical lens. The Norse vision of Ragnarok was never just apocalypse, it was transformation. After the world ends, it is reborn. A new sun rises. A new world blooms. Two humans emerge from the roots of Yggdrasil. To begin again. Fringe interpretation. Some scholars suggest this was the Vikings' way of coping with their harsh environment. Their myths acknowledged that winters would come, gods would fall, and even fate would fracture, but spring would always return. Life insists. Historians still argue whether Fenrir's role in this rebirth is active or incidental. But maybe that's the wrong question. Maybe it's not what he did, but what he stopped doing. He stopped fighting. And the world had space to breathe. You look down again. His eyes are closed now, not lifeless, just finished. And somehow this doesn't feel like a death. It feels like a graduation. Like a storm that finally lets the soil rest. Tyr stands. We will not forget him. He says to no one in particular, and you believe him, because how could anyone forget? Fenrir wasn't just a creature of prophecy. He was a question the gods never wanted to answer. A reminder that control isn't order, that silence isn't peace, that fear isn't foresight. He was the uncomfortable truth in a world of beautiful lies. And now? Now he is still. But in his stillness, the world finds its rhythm again. You rise, brushing ash from your clothes. The sky begins to warm. You hear birds, actual birds. And from somewhere deep in the soil, a melody begins to rise. It's faint, but it's real, and you know. The story isn't over. Just turning a new page. The sun rises, finally. Not with fanfare. Not with trumpets or celestial drums. Just a quiet bloom of light at the edge of the horizon, tentative, like it's checking to see if the coast is clear. You stand among the ashes of the old world, and for the first time in a long time, you breathe without bracing. The battle is over, but what now? What do gods do after fate ends? What does anyone do? You walk the perimeter of the field, past where Odin's spear lies abandoned, its tip dulled, its shaft splintered like a broken truth. The ravens are gone. The wolves of war have scattered. You're not sure whether Odin lives on in some spectral form, or whether Fenrir consumed more than just his body, maybe he consumed his role. Viwar still stands watch over Fenrir's body, motionless, a silhouette in the dawn. He hasn't spoken since it ended. He may never speak again, and that's okay. His silence says more than words could. The gods begin to gather now, not in arrogance or celebration, but in mourning. Not just for Odin, for the world that was, for the illusions they clung to, for the wolf they failed to understand. Even Loki is silent. Yes, he's here too. You find him leaning against a cracked stone, a shadow of his former self. No tricks today, no riddles. Just a tired smirk. He always liked you, Loki says softly. Fenrir, you look at him. Loki shrugs. You didn't look at him like they did. You didn't see a monster. You want to ask him why he didn't stop it, why he didn't fight for his son harder. But you already know, because Loki feared fate too. Feared that anything he did would only prove the prophecy right. So he stood back and lost him anyway. You leave him there. Let him mourn alone. As you pass the ruins of Valhalla, you hear voices, not loud but steady. The gods have begun speaking again. Planning, rebuilding. There's a tremble in their tone, like children who've just watched their house burn down and aren't sure if it's okay to be hopeful again. But they try, and that matters. Here's your historical tether, in the Voluspa, the Norse poem that lays out Ragnarok. A new world rises after the old one falls. A land that's green and fertile, where surviving gods meet again beneath the tree. Baldur returns from the dead. Evil is gone. And the sun has a daughter who takes her place. But here's a fringe twist. Some versions of the poem suggest not all gods return. Only those who learned. The rest fade. Historians still argue whether the Norse believed in linear progress or cyclical destruction. That is, does the world truly get better? Or does it just reset? Same story, different costumes. You walk now along the bank of a river, one that wasn't here before. It flows beside Fenrir's resting place, clear and cold. Some say it formed from his tears. Others say it marks the boundary between what was and what could be. You kneel. Touch the water. It doesn't burn. It heals. A single flower grows near the river's edge. You don't recognize it. It's nothing from Midgard or Asgard. Something new. Something native to a future not written yet. You smile. You're not sure why, but maybe that's what this is. A story that never quite ends. Just softens. You look up. The gods have begun clearing the field. Not erasing what happened, but honoring it, building with it. The ruins will remain. As reminders, as monuments. And Fenrir? They leave him where he is, not out of fear, out of respect. You walk back through the realm, your feet light now. Not because the world is fixed, it's not. But because, for once, it's honest. No prophecies. No chains. Just choice. And healing. You pause one last time beside Fenrir. His chest still rises and falls, barely. A god asleep. Or maybe waiting. You whisper, "Thank you." And for just a second, the wind carries back a wordless reply. "You're welcome." You descend from the battlefield, step by slow step, not down a mountain, but through memory. The world has shifted, and not in the cataclysmic way the myths promised, but in something gentler, something more. True. All around you, signs of renewal peek through the wreckage. The Bifrost, once shattered by the chaos, now glimmers faintly in the distance, a spectral arc forming in the mist, unsure if it's a bridge or a scar. You pass beneath the roots of Yggdrasil, and they seem relieved. The great tree groans like an old giant waking from a bad dream. You see mortals too, now. Not many. But they're here wandering the edges of Midgard, with eyes wide and hearts cautious, survivors, not of war but of truth. They've heard the stories in dreams, felt the tremors in their bones. And now they come searching, not for gods, but for meaning. You sit beside a campfire one night, and a child asks you, "Was Fenrir the villain?" And you hesitate, Because the real answer won't fit in a bedtime story. So you offer this. No. He was the price of ignoring a warning. The child nods, satisfied. Children understand things better than God sometimes. Here's your grounded detail for tonight. Some scholars believe that Fenrir wasn't just a mythological wolf, but a personification of the chaos the Norse feared in their own society. Famine, uprising, the breakdown of tribal order. He was a symbol of uncontrollable consequence, the thing that comes when leaders push too hard, when systems ignore their own flaws. Now for a quirky corner, in Old Norse seer rituals, practitioners would sometimes invoke wolf dreams before going into trance. These weren't nightmares, they were considered sacred glimpses into fate. The wolf in this context wasn't feared, it was welcomed. A companion on the road to understanding. Historians still argue whether this Fenrir as teacher view existed in the Viking Age or as a modern romantic projection. But one thing is clear, the more people retell the story, the more Fenrir evolves. You journey on, the realms rebuild around you, not quickly, not perfectly. There are arguments. Old rivalries flare. Even gods slip into their old habits. But some things different. No one forgets what happened. The chain that once bound Fenrir? It's gone, not destroyed. Not hidden, preserved. Laid across a shrine in the center of a new city, where anyone, god or mortal, can come touch it. Reminder that control is not the same as care, that prophecy is not permission, that even wolves can be right. You stand before that shrine one morning. Just as the first light touches the ribbon. It's small. So much smaller than you remember. Just a sliver of silk, frayed at the edges, faintly shimmering with the magic of broken promises. A little boy beside you asks, "What is it?" You smile. An apology. He furrows his brow, not quite understanding. But someday, he will, because this world, this new reality, is not one of perfection, it's one of perspective. And in a strange, twisted, myth-wrapped way, Fenrir gave it that. Not by devouring the gods, but by devouring the lie. You walk away from the shrine, through streets, where gods and mortals eat at the same tables, where stories are told in full, not just the polished parts, where no one is allowed to forget that the fiercest beasts may be the ones trying hardest to protect something, and the most dangerous gods are the ones too afraid to listen. You look to the sky. The stars are back now. Brighter. Closer. And somewhere, far away beyond the edge of the realms, past the bones of prophecy, you swear you hear a howl. Not of rage, of freedom. The wind shifts. Not a storm, just the kind of breeze that makes leaves talk to each other. You're walking now through a new forest. Young trees, soft moss, birds so bold they sing at your feet. The world is remade, not grander, not cleaner, just truer. It doesn't feel like a paradise. It feels like a second chance. You pause near a stream, watching the water skip stones on its own. There's something familiar in the sound, like distant paws brushing through the underbrush. You're not alone. From the shadows, someone steps forward. Not a god, not a warrior. A woman in a ragged blue cloak, her eyes pale and endless. She doesn't introduce herself, but you know, this is Hel, Fenrir's sister, goddess of the underworld. She walks like someone who carries the weight of every forgotten soul and doesn't mind it. Her gaze settles on you, then shifts to the sky. "So he's resting now," she says. It's not a question. You nod. She sits beside you. Not like a queen, like a sister in mourning. Or maybe in peace. "He was always so loud," she murmurs, a hint of fondness in her voice. Not just in sound, in presence, in wanting. You let the silence stretch. Then she says, "They think this is the end of his story." Another pause. But it's not. You look at her. Why? Hel glances toward the horizon, because stories don't end with silence. They end when people stop learning from them, and that hasn't happened yet. Here's your scholarly note for today. While hell is often portrayed as emotionless and remote, some older sources hint at a quieter depth. Not cruelty, but neutrality. The calm balance to her brother's chaos and fire. She is neither destroyer nor healer, she is what comes after. Fringe curiosity? In some modern interpretations, Hel and Fenrir are seen as twin aspects of truth. One swallows the world, the other holds what remains. Some pagan circles refer to them together as the bookends of fate, the storm, and the stillness. Historians still argue whether this modern framing has roots in Norse cosmology, or if it's simply our way of coping with stories too big to hold with just one meaning. You walk with Hel a while longer, not much is said, but much is understood. She leads you through the edge of the forest into a quiet hilltop, overlooking a field where children play, gods among them, no thrones, no thunder. Just games. Among them, one boy pauses. Golden-eyed at hair. He looks at you, smiles, then turns back to his play. You blink, and he's gone. Did you imagine him? Or was that him? Not reborn, but remembered. Because maybe that's all it takes. To be remembered. Kindly. To be retold truthfully. To exist in a world where no one gets to write you out of your own story. You sit on the hill as the sun dips low. Hel rests beside you, eyes half closed. The birds begin their lullaby, and you realize the world hasn't been reset. It's been rewritten. Not in ink or fire, but in memory. In myth. Enrir didn't destroy the world. He changed the narrative. And in doing so, he gave everyone else a chance to live better inside it. Not because they deserved it, but because someone finally told the truth. You smile. You whisper. He did it. And for a heartbeat, the wind howls back. Just once. Just enough. You wake to a world that no longer flinches at its own story. The sky above you is ordinary. Just soft morning light pouring through a patchy ceiling of clouds. The kind of sky no one writes poems about. And yet, after everything, it's exactly what you needed. Normal. Earned. You walk slowly now. No longer searching. No longer watching the horizon for the shape of prophecy. Because this isn't a world ruled by fear anymore. It's one shaped by memory, stitched together with myth and honesty. You pass a meadow, and in it stands a single monument. Not a statue, just a stone. Weathered, moss-covered, and etched with a single word in runes. Fenrir. No titles. No warnings. No elaborate tale. Because everyone already knows. You kneel beside it and place your hand on the stone. It's warm, as if the sun remembered something. Or maybe the earth did. You look around. There's no temple, no sacred grounds. Just wildflowers. The same kind that once grew along the edges of that cursed field where he lay bound for centuries. Now, they bloom freely. You close your eyes and let the wind pass through you. And in that wind, you hear whispers, not words. Feelings. Understanding. Grief. Gratitude. Not just for Fenrir, for what he made possible. Here's your final historical lens. The Norse were not afraid of endings. They expected them, prepared for them, built entire philosophies around them. Ragnarok was never a thing to stop it, was something to witness, to carry, to honor. Fringe theory. Some modern scholars now frame Fenrir not as a symbol of destruction, but of accountability. That he is not the force that ends the world, but the one that forces it to reckon, to confront the systems that no longer work and the truths no longer whispered. Historians still argue whether Fenrir's story is about justice, or simply inevitability, but maybe, just maybe, it's about forgiveness. Not from others, from the self. You rise, behind you. The stone waits patiently. No shrine needed. In front of you, the path is clear. Not easy, but clear. The gods have scattered, some to rebuild, some to rest, some to disappear. Loki has wandered again. Thor returns to the forge, building homes instead of weapons. Frigg, wrapped in quiet wisdom, tends to the children of this new age, teaching them stories that don't skip the hard parts. And somewhere, in the whispering forests, the shape of a wolf runs, not Fenrir, but the idea of him. And you? You carry the memory forward, because now, when someone tells the old tales about the chained beast, about the broken oath, about the end of everything, you can offer the other side. The one that didn't fit in a prophecy. The one where the monster wasn't monsters. Just honest. Just done being lied about. You reach the edge of a quiet cliff and sit. The breeze hums. The world spins. And in that stillness, the myth becomes real, not in gods or fate or fire, but in you. In your breath. In your willingness to listen. And in the truth you'll never let them bury again. Asterisk. So now you rest. The fire has burned itself out, and in its place lies not ash, but soil, rich, soft, ready. You breathe in slow, let it fill your chest, your thoughts, the corners of your body where tension used to hide. You remember the sound of Fenrir's breath, deep and steady like a sleeping mountain. Not threatening, not wild, just present. A reminder that power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it waits, watches, warns. The gods have learned that now. Or maybe they haven't, but you have. And maybe that's enough. The wind is gentle against your skin now. Almost like fur brushing past. Almost like the edge of a story closing itself, without slamming, without forgetting. You sit a little longer. Let your heartbeat slow to match the rhythm of a world rebuilding itself. Piece by honest piece. There are no more chains here. Only choices. Only stories, passed from hand to hand like firelight in the dark. And as your eyes begin to drift, the final image lingers, not of battle or prophecy, but of a wolf at peace, sleeping beneath a sky that finally stopped watching him like a weapon. And in that silence, a promise. Not of perfection, but of truth. Good night. You've earned it.